Hello everyone and welcome to Gitsapalooza. Today we're going to be continuing our terrain review series, and today it is TT Combat, which is Troll Trader Combat. This is their Eastern Empires line. So we're going to start out with the scatter terrain, which I think I've shown you before already, but I'm going to show it again today for completeness. And then we'll move on to some of the buildings. Right now, we still have our same yokai in the background. There he is to give us a little bit of scale. So this is called Eastern Accessories 2. It has 8 items, 9 items, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 9 items. So it has the Buddha now. Note that the base with the wood and everything is what I added to it to use this as an objective. But the Buddha itself is what you get with its own little pedestal. Everything here was very well cast. It's cast in plastic. I had almost no cleanup on any of this, and they painted it beautifully. So I'm delighted with this particular set. You can see there's the Buddha and 2 large sake jars. I decided to have some fun with them, and I went online, and the companies that produce these, much I think like brands of alcohol in the US, will put their own logos and designs on these big sake containers, and so I did the same thing. So these are probably not historical by any way, shape, or form. However, they're pretty and they were fun to do. So you get those. Let us turn the wheel. You get a couple of stone lanterns that are plain. You also get a couple of stone lanterns that have greenery growing on them. And you get a couple of temple lions. I painted these as solid stone. The company, I think, has theirs painted in verdigris, so it's a bronze. I don't think it matters how you do them. They are, once again, beautifully cast. No problems there. So there you go. So this is where we're starting our TT Combat review with a little bit of scatter terrain. They do have a second scatter terrain set called Eastern Accessories. It's got a gong, it's got the Buddha, it's got some short lanterns, and it has 3 little round Zen gardens. So I don't have that one. Anyway, moving on. Our next set is called Oriental Bridges and Lanterns. You actually get 2 bridges with this set and 8 lanterns, though you'll note, for my purposes, the 1 bridge fills the screen quite well. I think that's probably big enough for a 50mm figure to get across. It's very pretty, beautiful arched bridge. I like the little extra line of detail right below where the rails attach. I just stained mine, and I'm really happy with it. So the only problem with the bridges, and this is not their arched bridges, this is every arched bridge I've ever seen, is that it is kind of hard to get the models to stay kind of in the sweet spot on the bridge. Now I have a plan for dealing with this. Sometimes you can get the lip in there, but I think what I'm going to do is just take a little bit of silicone, like you might put in to seal a fish tank or something, and then just paint a very thin layer of silicone on those boards. And I think that will do a pretty good job of giving just enough traction so that the figures will stick. Obviously that figure in particular has a pretty low profile. You put something that is a little top heavy on there and they just go flying. So, but I have a plan. We'll see if it works. However, I absolutely love the bridge. You don't see the lanterns because I do not absolutely love the lanterns. They're a nice attempt. They're just because they're made out of wood and they have lots of seams to them. I don't like the final look of the lanterns, so I did put them together. My son put them together for me, and I tried painting some, and I just didn't like it. They'd take a lot of effort of green stuffing or something to fill in all the cracks so that you would get, you know, what would look more like a finished piece. However, for my money, the bridges by themselves are worth it alone. They are, like I said, you get 2 of these and they are beautiful. So kind of hard to argue with that. Next up, we have the Torii gates, and that is plural. In the pack, you will get enough stuff for 2 Torii gates. You can see they're big. There's plenty of room in there for a biggest figure that Bushido offers. You'll note the name plaque, I built that myself, so that does not come included. But the little oval stands that the Torii gate stands on are there to give you a good set. Obviously, many real Torii gates are rounded. You can't do that with laser cut wood, so they've done a layered effect, which I really like. I think it works fine. I have 2 of these. I like them both. Obviously, I haven't put them both here because they're the same, so what's the point? You can tell they get a little bit banged up as I move them around in boxes full of terrain. See a little white spot in the corner? That's not on them, that's on me. So I'm pretty happy with them. They weren't very expensive, and they make for a nice large Torii gate. If you're doing a temple scene, these are nice to put outside of your Hokora or of your shrine. Kind of I usually put them, instead of in the middle of the board, I will put them at the introduction to the board, kind of in a corner if I have a pathway leading in or something like that. But anyway, very nice. I like them. Sturdy, and this one has not been treated kindly, and it's still in pretty darn good shape. So I don't have any complaints. This is the temple bell, and it is one of my absolute favorite pieces from any manufacturer. It's beautifully made. It's got you know, the stonework laser cut into the wood. It's got a beautiful roof. It's large, but not too large for the table. I find this actually, there are a lot of pieces that I would desperately like to add to my Bushido tables, but with only 2 feet by 2 feet, a lot of the beautiful pieces I want are big, and they're much too big for the table. This is not. This is kind of pushing the boundaries as far as I'm concerned, but this is still very adequate, and Carl did a great job of putting it together. Of course, the roof comes off, so if you want to have figures in there, you can. You can see our little yokai can move around in there. I don't probably think, maybe a medium figure could get in there, depending, but I probably wouldn't, you know, if you want to move around in there comfortably, you're probably looking at a medium, with the new size. You could get a medium or a small figure in there fine. I think a large figure would, or anything bigger would be difficult. But, and then I should set little marks in here so the roof goes back. There we go. It'll find its own place eventually. But that's what it is. That's a temple bell, and it's a beautiful piece. I love it. Next we move on to the Michiya shop front, or Makaya, I'm not sure how to pronounce that. This is a great little piece. I have 2 of these. I've ordered 1 more. This is just a little store. You can add to your towns or to a market. I have a market board, so I just put it on, stained it, scratched it up with some sandpaper, added some weathering powders, maybe a little bit of a wash. If you're wondering what those banners say out in front, they say shop. They come with a couple of doors, sliding doors, so you can see the door there to the left of the yokai. And there's a sign up here that I haven't filled out yet, and then the roof opens, illuminating the inside, where they have a big mat laid on the ground, and you could fill that with goods if you wanted. If I ever find a cheap way to make goods, I may do that. And I love the shop. I have, like I said, I have two. I ordered one more. They have a small footprint, so they're really easy to use on the table. You can maneuver around them. I left mine big and open on the inside so that people could fight inside of it if they wanted to. I didn't. There we go. I did a good job putting that back. So they're just a really handsome looking piece. Not very expensive. Again, made for 28 millimeter, like almost all of the things you'll see today. However, they work just fine on the Bushido scale, and because they're actually a little undersized, that means they don't crowd the table as much as the full-size buildings do, which I prefer. So even if 34 millimeter buildings were available, I'm not sure I'd get them, to be honest. I think these do the job just fine. They set the scene. Most of the time you don't see people fighting inside buildings. It might be fun to make that a major portion of a game. But for the most part, people just run around and they end up being very nice scenery. So there you go. The shop front. I like it. Here we have a set called the Wooden Walkways. This isn't all of the set. In the set you will get enough material to make 8 of the 4-inch sections for the wooden walkways. I use these in a number of circumstances. Sometimes I use them as bridges across a river. You guys have seen them on my lagoon board. You've also seen them if you've watched my run up to Adepticon on the lava board. So anywhere I need walkways, these are 4 inches long per section. You'll note that little section, that's because my set actually came with an extra end piece. So I cut one of the 4-inch sections in half and made a couple of shorter pieces, one with the end piece provided and one I custom built an end piece for, which is kind of neat. It just gives me a little bit more flexibility when I'm filling in walkways or I'm filling in docks. That's what either docks or bridges is what I usually use these for. They were handy, they were easy to put together. I just stain them and they're good to go. So these are fairly new docks, obviously. They're nice and shiny brown. These would weather to gray very quickly, but I really like the way they lay out. You can put the boats that I showed you earlier. Are they available? No, they're both filled with junk. Here we go. Nah, I'm not going to do that. It's just, but you know, you could get, there are a number of companies that offer boats, and you could put a boat up alongside the docks and make it look good. So anyway, there you go. Wooden walkways. Very handy, very flexible. I like them. This was one of my first sets of buildings for Bushido. These are 3 hokora, or small shrines. You can see that I've combined a couple of different sets from a couple of different companies in order to put some offerings at the hokora. So we have rice jars, we have some sake jars. The roofs are all a little different because my son isn't really big on reading instructions or actually even looking for them. So I think the only roof that's built the way it's supposed to look is this one. But the fact that they're built a little differently just certainly doesn't hurt. They've got nicely cut stone piers. Again, I'm not sure that the fact that some of the lines on the bases don't line up has I don't know if that was the fact that it was one of Carl's earliest building projects or if there were actually some difficulty with the model. But in any case, it is the foibles, if they exist, are very minor. And I absolutely love these little shrines. They're great pieces. They're really small, probably, 50 to 60 millimeters on a side. So you can put them anywhere. If you don't want to do a full-blown temple layout, you know, these little shrines could be anywhere. They could be on a street corner, or they could be in the forest. So the cool thing about these hokora is they can show up anywhere. So you don't have to commit yourself to a temple table to be able to add a little bit of a temple feel to it. And plus, oh, as I mentioned before, I want to point this out. This little dinged up here, that's not them, that's me. As I said, I've had these for almost a year probably, and just, you know, they get put in boxes and moved around, and so they get a little dinged up. So every once in a while, yeah, but they're wood, so they're easy to go back to and fix. You put a little stain on them or a little paint, depending on what you do. And then if you'll notice, like some of the shadows, or this is just weathering powder. So I chose to do it in black. You could do it in a brown or gray or red, whatever you wanted to. But that's how I'm getting some of the shadows into these, is I'm just taking weathering powder and a brush and kind of smashing it in there and rubbing it around. And it works fine. It works fine. It gives the sense of a little bit of shadow, a little bit of wear, and I think the end result is pretty good. Let me see, this I made, in fairness. So the little rope with the little prayer papers on there is something I had seen in photographs, and I made that myself. But so you don't get the jars or anything like that. Those come from a different company. But the Hikora themselves are very well made and very nice. And you know, come to think of it, I think I actually did the wood. Come here, let me look at the picture. No, I can't tell. I think these actually do come with a textured surface that looks more like concrete, and I wanted more wood, so I think that's my planking on those Hikora. So that was just me being fiddly. But those look like individually laid planks, so that's kind of that's how I can tell I did it, as opposed to TT Combat doing it. Anyway, I love them. I still love them. And they give you the option to do all kinds of cool stuff. You can add your own planks or something else to the surface. You can put offerings like I did. You can put the rope with the little prayer slips on there. So these are really fantastic little pieces. So I highly recommend them. All right, our final offering from TT Combat is at Temizuya. This is a place where people would go to purify themselves, wash their hands, etc., before going into a shrine. This is another absolutely stunning piece made by TT Combat. I just love it. It's got all these different elements to it. It's got the tile and the stone on the floor. It's got the actual basin with the water and all the ladles in it. It has of course, the water effects are things that I put in, but in essence, you know, you've got the water basin. You've got all these beautiful timbers that make up the bulk. And then, of course, the roof comes off, and you can maneuver a medium-sized figure around in there reasonably well. I don't think there's quite enough room to get the base in between the side supports and the edge of the... I suppose we can look at that right now, if I can stop moving everything around. So yeah, that's not big enough, but I'll leave it up to you. I mean, you guys can sort it out on your own, whether you want to just say, yeah, you can move around through there. We usually do, which why make the game more complicated than it has to be. So you put the lid on, and there we go. Got a beautiful roof, nicely made. That's a Temizuya. So that brings us to the end of our little tour of TT Combat's offerings. I own most of their line, and I have a couple more pieces coming in. I've got another one of the shop fronts coming in. They make a 2-story storage house. I'm going to get that. They do make some neater, larger buildings, but again, I have difficulty with buildings with large footprints having too big of an impact on the game. However, I have a plan. I have a scheme. I am going to try getting some larger buildings and then cutting them in half. And then, in essence, just putting them along the sides of the board so they act as theme-setting pieces that look really cool but don't have a negative impact on the game because their footprint is so large. So we'll see how that goes. I'll do a video on that when the time comes. So thank you for joining us, as we look through the offerings of yet another company that can provide some really great stuff to support playing Bushido as well as other Japanese games. I guess we'll see you next time. Thank you for joining me on Gitsapalooza.